everyone, and welcome to Deep Dive. It's me, Crispina Robert, and with my co-host, Stephen Chia.
Hello, I'm back again.
Okay, Steve, today's topic, I'm going to give you a list of businesses, and you tell me if you have a memory of it.
Okay, go for it.
Borders Bookstore.
Yeah, definitely heard about it.
McDonald's at Centrepoint?
Ooh. Okay, not so sure if I've been to that outlet.
You were not a cool kid, clearly.
Oh, Centrepoint
Swee
kid.
Kee Eating House?
Swee Kee, chicken rice, right?
Actually, I think it's soup. Cantonese soup.
Okay, then maybe
Okay,
mine was
no.
Nam Kee or some other key, but
Okay,
it was key to my life. Yeah.
Okay, one more. Prima Tower Revolving Restaurant.
Yes, that one I've heard of it before. I've heard of it, and I used to drive by it, quite often.
Okay.
But for many years, I thought it was closed. And then one day I read in the press, like in 2021, they officially closed. And I was like, you mean it's been open all these years?
I've only eaten there once. It was very weird. It really is a revolving restaurant.
Okay, what?
As in the place moves, right?
Oh yeah. Really slowly.
Yeah,
right?
very slowly. Yeah. So, but I don't miss any of those. Are you sentimental
about any of those names you mentioned? Borders? No, actually, I'm not the sentimental kind. To be honest, I'm not nostalgic for a lot of things. So it's nice to have, but when it's not there, and to be honest, like Singapore, you go away, you come back, there's a new building, and you're like, what used to be there? And I honestly cannot remember quite often.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm completely opposite. Like many Singaporeans, when I read about a heritage business that closes after a very long time, I actually do feel quite sad because I feel like I have a memory attached to it. And when that place disappears, it feels like my memory is also, I don't know, erased.
A part of you?
In some way.
Okay.
It's no longer there.
Okay, so actually that's what we want to talk about today.
Yes.
Because with,
Exactly.
in Holland Village recently, the magazine shop there, Thambi's was closing down, or it's closed by now. And a lot of people were saying, oh my gosh, we're going to miss it, But at the same time, many other people were saying, well, it's been there for so long. And the fact that they're still selling print in this day and age is a miracle that they survived.
Yeah. So our question is, can we as individuals, even corporations, do something about preserving heritage businesses? Whether it's unrealistic to expect in a tough business environment for places like Thambi to survive or not. So we want to contextualize what a heritage business is in the first place. For instance, HMV, Borders, Tower Records, they came early, but by the time they exited, the whole entire business model was not viable anymore. And then you have the likes of Swee Kee and Prima and Thambi. So in your view, in your mind, having run this business in your family for 4 generations now, what do you think is a heritage business?
Well, I manage a family business that's being passed down to us right now. I'm 3rd generation. In terms of heritage, I'm 7th generation Peranakan. So I think knowing our roots is really important, and also knowing how we can contribute within the context of what we do is also equally important. So I think a heritage business requires continuity.
Okay.
If there's a lacking in the space where there could be no one within the family who wants to continue, or for the matter of not having to be able to sustain a business where no longer viable, there's always a threat for businesses like this to
But what actually makes it a heritage? I mean, you're saying it must be family continuity?
No, I believe it's the effort to have it being continuously in the public sphere, having to be in the memories and the forefront. And whenever you're in Singapore, for example, and you talk about chicken rice, there's tons of different brands of chicken rice. But if you talk about chicken rice, it's part of someone else's memories,
Right.
So I guess.
But then in that same sense, what is chicken rice to you and to me will be different, because my heritage could be this ABC brand, yours could be XYZ,
So I think there's no need for us to go and upfront tell someone else they have to believe or they ought to know that there's a certain way to consume. For example, chap chai. My family cooks chap chai.
Okay.
Someone else's family will also have chap chai in their own way. There's different recipes. But we enjoy eating chap chai, Chap chai is a staple meal in most households.
But it still doesn't really tell us
the heritage part. Okay, Dr. Lai, you have to weigh in
because
now.
I want to argue, so why not we talk about Borders and HMV. Actually, is it because those are international chains?
There's, of course, 2 types of heritage. You have your tangible heritage and your intangible heritage. And I think what we are discussing here is something that's closer in the realm of intangible heritage,
Right.
where it's not something you can touch and feel. Of course, you can eat the kueh chang and all that. But when we are talking about, let's say, chicken rice or a place that we have memories or share common
Yes.
identity with, it refers to kind of an essence or a sense of something that we have in common, even if the chicken rice you prefer is quite different from the chicken rice that someone else would prefer. So a lot of times it's about this common memory or experience
I think
of
you put
doing something.
good keywords there, memory and experience, because
Yeah.
it's a part of your growing up experience, so it's in your memory. But then I'll argue, what about like fire disco? I mean, yeah, maybe you're too young.
Oh my God, nobody knows fire
Come on,
disco
okay, like
except for me and you,
Spark,
Steve.
Edmond, you must know Spark. That was the
No,
Ghost
really
Spark.
no.
Ghost Spark. Okay, these were the nightclubs, that
Okay.
came for a few years, then they went. But again, it were part of someone's growing up experience. But we don't call them heritage.
It is something that I think maybe in terms of the nightclub and the nightlife experience, it is not something that appeals to a large number of the population here. When we look at things like, or places like maybe Thambi, okay, or even the closure of certain areas in Singapore, these are places that hold significance to a larger number of Singaporeans. And you don't even need to be Singaporean, you just need to be someone who has lived here, who has built connections here. When you reach a certain, I think, kind of population, it allows people to share kind of certain commonality, and then it adds value.
Yeah, which probably explains why people were upset when the National Library was demolished, right? So, in doing research for this episode, we came across so many different types of heritage businesses. Perfumeries in Kampong Glam, books, medicine shops, watchmakers. There was even a religious effigy maker. These guys meant something to the people who consumed these products at that time. But how do they compete in the modern world? Like, there's no demand. Should they transform to keep going?
The easiest answer would be they need to transform, right? Because
So yes,
because
answer is yes.
because we do our lifestyle, our practice, even our cultural practices evolve with times. You can't expect people to just keep following to something that was done centuries ago.
Yeah.
We do see that a lot of the industries are reaching the sunset era, or they have already died
Well,
out.
put it this
Yeah.
way, the world keeps changing. Technology changes so many,
Yes.
the way we do so many things, the way we live. If you're, this business that you're in, if it was not economically viable, then some would argue, why keep it around?
I think for us, the good thing is that having a heritage business like ours really depends on the strength of the family, the unity. A lot of times, not only within our business, it's also a lot of different communities. The gotong royong spirit must be there. When we're talking about heritage business, we must look into the values and the traditions.
How did your business transform
Right.
to make sure that you are economically viable?
I think first of all, we have to understand that if we don't stand up for this effort to promote heritage businesses or traditions, we will definitely lose something inherent in us, that sense of belonging.
Are you saying that heritage businesses should be supported and perhaps maybe even subsidized to ensure their, longevity?
I think subsidizing might add on a certain sense of reliance, which I don't think is very healthy.
Okay.
But perhaps to understand that traditional business may require some form of presence, awareness. A lot of times, older businesses, because they may not necessarily have the generation after them to continue on, take on the baton, how would they be in a position to spread the message that they're still around and they're still doing the things they're doing?
some support.
The revolving restaurant could be one of which,
You're saying that Prima could have transformed, lah.
They could have.
They could have become a modern restaurant, sure. I mean, still revolving, just revolve around different things, I guess.
Yeah.
No, but so you're saying in a way there needs to be some support for these heritage businesses. Maybe not subsidies, but some
Right,
support to help keep them alive.
Okay, speaking about support,
Yeah.
right? When Thambi Magazine closed, there was a lot of shock and people were really upset, actually. And then suddenly he had like so many people visiting his store, and so some commentators online were saying that that's a little bit hypocritical because only when the store is closing and then you're like, getting all sad and upset, But you didn't go and buy a single
Yep.
thing from him. All these years he was there. So when you talk about support, do you also mean that we have to support? Or we should be aware that, hey, this is special. We need to support.
Yeah, I think that's where I think the government with the National Heritage Board, they're doing a very awesome role in here in terms of trying to identify heritage businesses and giving them the platform to spread awareness and giving them the airtime to share their stories, you know.
But do you think people should purchase and, step up and support?
Thambi, actually, to be fair, I think it's a magazine store, and would we classify him as a heritage business?
Yeah, he's been around for 80 years.
Yeah, okay. So simply because he's been in that corner for 80 years, so
But it is
people
part
would go
of
by, would
Holland
see
Village.
it.
That's the heritage of the place, right?
So therefore, he should remain just because he was part of the original infrastructure or the original tenants.
I think so.
Is that the argument?
But that's something I do raise with my students in class. Should we force a group of people or a business or even a community to stay stagnant, even
Okay.
at great economic cost, just for our own satisfaction?
So that we
or
feel good.
To feel good or to feel less guilty. Because we must understand that heritage is living and breathing. Right? And the people who are preserving and conserving heritage are living and breathing as well. So we need to understand that we can't be that selfish and say, okay, you stay there so
Yeah.
that I have my sense of place and identity, but
You
I don't
don't make
care.
money.
Yeah, you don't
So
make
every
money.
time I walk by, I can see you. Oh, hello, hi.
Yes,
but
and then-
actually, I still don't buy any magazines.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think there is something we can do to immediately solve this.
Okay, let's
this-
take the magazine shop as an example. What are some of the things we could have done? How could we have kept him, going? How kept that business going?
We wouldn't have known that this would take place until a stage where I guess perhaps Thambi themselves decided that there's no continuity. Would the next generation be willing to take over? That's another concern. I've not heard of any such proposals, but I believe that continuity is one of the key factor.
But it cannot continue the same way, right?
No,
As
definitely,
a brick and
definitely not.
mortar shop
Definitely not.
selling
So
print
I-
magazines,
so
right?
when I was reading about some of these businesses, okay, so for instance, right, the perfume guys at Kampong Glam, so originally they had a certain type of perfumes that don't appeal very much to current generations anymore. So they have to invest in, go online, create an entire different line, green tea perfume, whatever that appeals to younger people. So that's what I suppose transformation really means, right?
Yeah.
So in the case of a print magazine, might be a bit tougher.
One thing, when as a kid, I used to collect comics. Until today, there are still comic collectors. There is still demand in a certain area. So maybe he needed to evolve his business
Right.
to cater to slightly different audiences as well, right? So that we
Yeah.
still have the magazine shop per se, but maybe he's also selling some other items besides just magazines.
Right.
Right.
Like Edmond's shop lah.
We evolved, no longer just a retail front. We promote the Peranakan heritage. There's a few things that we do as a front to promote Katong Jujet as a community. So it's no longer just our business alone. We are in the business to promote heritage and culture.
But you
Yep.
can do this because your business is sustainable. It's making enough money to keep itself
Right, definitely.
going, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes. When I came back to the family business, my family, they were struggling. Manpower crunch came in. There was also the bird flu and the swine flu, the various crises that came and hit my family business really hard. But, the third generation decided we all have to come back. If we don't come back, I guess it's not just our childhood memories. Someone else's childhood memory will be gone, So we decided all to come back to help with the family business. We brought our own interest to the business and evolved into what it is today. It's no longer just only a food business, but a heritage business that promotes the
Right.
Peranakan
So
heritage.
it's no longer just
Yes.
selling dumplings.
But you're
essentially.
keeping the memory alive. So what
Exactly.
it was best known for, the essence
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
still there,
Yes.
but there are many other things to
Exactly.
celebrate at the same time.
Exactly.
Okay, I want to talk about rent. Rents are the biggest culprit that
Do you
people
guys pay rent?
always.
You own your own building.
Well, luckily, my parents, they purchased the property. So
Oh, so lucky.
Yes, we're not in the mercy of
but
rents.
rent appears to be a critical factor.
It is,
So, at popular sites like Kampong Glam, rents are apparently going up.
Yes.
So in a CNA report, Nasi Padang store Sabah Menanti, the owner said that he had to move because the rent was going to double to about $17,000
Yes.
per month. Now we know that rents are set at obviously market prices.
Yes.
But do you think heritage businesses should get a special dispensation?
No, I think the competitive edge is to know that we are working alongside the economy of scales. There are a lot of foreigners coming in to see if there are ways to make money through property gains. And one of the things is to buy commercial properties. When they were to purchase out of a loan from a bank, definitely they have to find a way to cover their loans. And that's why rental will go up. Recently, we've been inquired by interested party to buy our property. We know that the value is very attractive, but we decided not to sell because it's family heritage.
So they're offering you more than the listed price?
Well, it's an attractive amount for us to retire, but do we want to retire? I don't think that's the case.
What is the point that you're trying to make here?
So, I mean, if they buy a commercial property, for example, they have to cover their loans too. Definitely, rental prices would have to go up.
Because they buy high.
Okay.
Yes.
So they
charge
will
high.
obviously
They
charge
Yes.
high rent.
But regardless of who buys, everybody wants to make money,
Right.
So any landlord will see if my neighbor's charging 20,000, hey, I'm gonna charge 20,000 too.
Right. I mean,
Heritage business or not.
the good thing, if you look at Katong Juchet, we have a lot of heritage businesses, you know.
Yep.
And they do not themselves have a physical building for themselves, so they roam around Katong Juchet. They find the best rentals and they roam around. Where do you find the prata store? You know, sometimes it's at the corner of Kun Sing, sometimes it's at, you know, they move around.
So would it help if there were regulation to say if you are a heritage business, you get 15% of your rental, but you must do certain things to encourage or promote your heritage?
Yeah, I think that would be very encouraging. First of all, to encourage the generation, maybe perhaps the older generation and the newer ones, to know that if they're taking over something,
There's
there's
something
something
in it
back
for
them
them
up.
lah.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Do you think rents are a critical factor?
I would think so, because like we said earlier, right, you can't expect a heritage business to keep going at a great economic cost. Another point to add to what we have been discussing so far is if, let's say, we get the community to participate in conserving heritage as well, instead of just waiting for landlords to lower the rent or waiting for the government to declare this a heritage site or something of significance. So you can get business owners and other stakeholders in the community to actually come together and think about how you can help the business transform, how you can bring the heritage to other parts of the neighborhood. Everybody gets to be part of this process. Then I think it can make it more sustainable.
Right.
Instead of a one time we say, oh, this is a heritage thing, and then everybody say, yay, and then we forget and we go on with our life.
15% discount and that's that.
Yeah.
But the good thing is this does happen. The community in more recent times are a bit more involved in this because they feel that they want to keep some of these places alive.
Yes.
I mean, I think we're talking about the old police academy, right?
Yeah.
They're going to build some new HDB flats there, but they've said they're going to keep certain parts of the academy around to build it into the new, so the old and the new to coexist.
Yeah, they call it adaptive use. And I mean, from our observation, it appears to be the civil society is getting more interested. They care about these things and they say, don't just destroy it, keep some of it, use some of it so that some of it is still there as a reminder of our past and how far we've come, etc. Do you think that's, going forward, that's a good way?
I think that's a very good start because once you build it into your everyday life and your everyday space, heritage becomes something that is more constant. Maybe you're not aware of it, but you're actively involved in its conservation and its transformation. Yeah.
But some would argue this is easier because it's a building, You're building a new HDB estate. Sure, you can incorporate the old and new, and it doesn't.
That's not a
and
business.
it doesn't cost
That's
money. It's
right.
not a business. It's not a day-to-day operational kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. You raised this, Edmond, was the National Heritage Board, which actually offers a transformation grant. And I think quite a few businesses have used this. The effigies that I was talking about, they definitely did. Using 3D printing, for example, instead of doing hand-drawn so that they could digitalize the whole thing. Do you think that, even the grant like this, I know it's a scale. Should it be scaled for business viability first or just blanket? As long as you've been around for 80 years, I'll give you this amount to work with.
For our own business, we have yet to tap on any grants. We try not to. I think if we were to tap
Why
on
is
it,
that?
Why is it? Yeah.
well,
why is that?
I think if we tap on any grants, there's always going to be this responsibility.
You mean you have a KPI in return for the grant?
Expectations.
Exactly. I just give you an example. of us having to employ more Singaporeans in our factory, for example. It's so very difficult to find good help these days. And so I mooted the idea of having to employ PWDs within the workplace. It took
Persons
persons with disabilities. It took about close to 6 to 7 years, not only to convince my family, after the convincing my family that it should be something that we should be looking at, then the authorities come in, like SG Enable, for example, will come and, hey, look, can we support your effort?
Right.
I think when grants come in, there's a certain level of commitment. They do not understand our business model will impact the way we operate. For example, we know certain ways in which we can optimize the workspace better.
Yeah.
But because of the grants coming in, they have to include certain spaces for certain workings. It will definitely impact our production. So we decided, look, don't tap on the grant, just do what we have to do and employ.
But I'm sure the grants are meant to help
Definitely.
businesses, right? So,
Definitely.
and in some cases, usually is like, I think of a VC, a venture capitalist, investing and saying, I'll give you $2 million, but you must do A, B, C, D, E, right? Because they think A, B, C, D, E will help the business grow.
Right.
Yeah, but he's saying in some cases
It doesn't, it works
doesn't
against
work
the
that
process.
way
It
lah.
doesn't work
But
that way.
then isn't that a case of more like maybe they don't understand your specific business,
Yes.
you give feedback and they can
Right.
streamline it.
In terms of grants, they have to be very flexible. Heritage businesses like ours have run for so many generations. We know the workings of our business very well.
Right.
Even a minor tweak in how things ought to be done may impact the entire production.
So be more flexible.
Yes.
Although
Really.
there's no such thing as free money lah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, right? And there's no free lunch. We know that.
So we try not to tap on grants. we try to help ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think? Grants definitely.
I think grants definitely help. I mean, I benefited from research grants, definitely. Yes.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I do think grants help, and I think it goes back to the point: if you have communication with and participation by all stakeholders. So maybe if you get a heritage grant for businesses, the community comes in, and everybody can actually consider each other's motivations and interests.
You know what grant is good? The productivity grant.
Okay.
We tapped on that. ESG helped us a lot.
Okay.
Really. And because of that, we can employ more PWDs. So there are different grants that we tapped on, but not those that are very, rigid.
I mean, sure.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's hard to make a grant that fits
Right,
all
exactly.
needs, right?
Yeah.
But here in the case of heritage, we're asking, how do we keep them alive? And are they worth
keeping alive.
keeping alive even if they're economically not viable?
We will need our younger generation
Right.
to actually be more involved in this, because I think obviously some of the places that you've listed or we have mentioned earlier, they appeal to us because we grew up or we did something along the way.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think for the younger generations, I think to a lot of them, these are places that will draw blank looks when you mention them.
That's true.
Yeah, of course.
Yes,
Yeah.
and if we are talking about conservation, I think some of them will go, what is this? Why do I need to care about it?
They don't care.
I mean, eventually, I think whatever loss we are feeling, and whatever loss our parents or grandparents' generation felt earlier, it's the same thing. It's always one generation will go, I don't see the connection here. But if you want heritage to be conserved and to have longevity and sustainability, you need the younger generation to buy in as well, because they are the ones who are
Correct.
carrying the baton longer.
When I grew up, my family, we're not very traditional. I mean, like when I got married, we never did tea ceremony. Like, I never even knew about these things until my friends got married. I'm the kind of guy at home. I throw things a lot. I don't keep. Yeah, I say this one we haven't used it in like how many years. Just throw. But I guess the point is, if we want to keep these memories alive, I think it's the onus of that heritage business to find a way to make themselves connected to the current population
Yeah.
too.
Right.
So the magazine shop at Holland Village, maybe he should have opened a bubble tea shop as well. So you can read magazines and drink bubble tea.
But the young folks don't even read like magazines, right? So everything's on their phone.
They still
It's-
surf at stuff online. So could he have
So maybe
provided...
it could have been an online thing as well.
Exactly.
Just to transform it to where they are. But to say that, look, this I've been around here for a long time.
All of these are what ifs, right?
Yeah.
It could be a case of, what if I can offer my experience of running
Yes.
a print shop like this to, let's say, a younger generation
Yep.
looking at businesses in this similar venture, and
Or
then
maybe a shared space, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think for your heritage business,
Yes.
it could be, let's say, younger generation entrepreneurs who are interested in heritage and all that as well. Then if you have collaboration, I think
Yeah.
it is a way to start moving forward.
Any last, wish for heritage businesses?
I hope they stay around for us. Selfish, Jing. Yeah. But I think they are really important because they really contribute to the sense of identity and community that we all have.
As a third generation business owner, I guess I can send out an appeal to all second or third generation business owners, encourage your children or the next generation to take on the baton. I think a lot of changes will not be comfortable. It took me many years to convince my parents that things ought to change a certain way. So did my brothers, my siblings. But change will have to happen. If not, our heritage will be gone.
I know I stand out here in the sense that I'm not so nostalgic, but I think, it's nice to have these memories. And if they can be economically viable, by all means, I think we should keep them. But it does mean that businesses do need to evolve. They do
Right.
need to look beyond just what is happening now and plan for the future.
Exactly.
And so when you pass it down to your next generation, make sure it's economically viable first. Then it makes their life a lot easier too, right?
I think the key is that my parents had no intention to pass it down to us.
Oh, really?
No. They
You're so good at they're like, really?
Yeah, really. I mean, we all came back because of responsibility. So I think the key is not to insist, but I think get us curious. If we are curious enough to...
Invested, right?
Yeah.
Get
Invested, as in you
invested.
want to keep it going.
Yeah.
Right,
Because
right,
if
right.
they hadn't kept it alive, then maybe you wouldn't even be interested in keeping it going, right?
Perhaps.
But somebody wants to buy his,
The building, that's a different story. That one we do our property podcast and we can.
Okay, thank you everyone
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
for
Thank you.
coming on and listening to us. Thanks to our guests and our listeners. Steve.
Yeah, of course, there's a big team helping us get all this done every week. Tiffany Ang, Joanne Chan, Junaini Johari, and Saya Win. Sound mixing is by Ken Delbridge. This is Deep Dive, and we'll see you guys next week.